You're standing next to a fire. It's 40,000 BC. The sun dropped an hour ago. The darkness around you is absolute. Not city dark, not suburb dark. The kind of dark that has weight, that presses in from every direction. And then someone in your group starts moving, not running, not fighting, just moving, swaying, stomping a foot against the ground. Within minutes, without anyone deciding to, without anyone sending out invitations, other people start doing it too. The whole group moving together, breathing together, making the same sounds, with their feet against the same patch of dirt. Here's the question nobody asks. Why? The easy answer, the one you've probably heard, is that early humans danced for the gods, for the hunt, to make it rain, or make the crops grow, or keep the darkness away. And look, that's not wrong exactly. Those things came later. The rituals got layered on, the meanings got assigned. The priests showed up and wrote the rules. But that explanation skips something. It assumes the meaning came first, and the movement followed. What if it was the other way around? What if ancient humans didn't dance because they believed something? What if they believed something because they danced? Here's another easy answer. They danced for joy, spontaneous expression. They felt something and their bodies moved, which is romantic and probably contains some truth, but also explains almost nothing. Plenty of things feel good, that we don't do compulsively, communally, and across every single culture. In the archaeological record, without a single exception, if dance were just joy leaking out of bodies, you'd expect it to be occasional, inconsistent, personal. It is none of those things. Dance is one of the most universal human behaviors ever documented. More universal than agriculture, more universal than writing, more universal than organized religion. Every culture ever studied dances, no matter how isolated, no matter how different in every other way. That kind of universality doesn't happen by accident. That is biology talking. So what is the body actually doing when it moves like that? What is actually happening in a human brain when it locks into rhythm with other human brains around a fire in the dark? The answer is stranger and more interesting than joy, stranger than religion, stranger than anything the obvious explanations give you credit for. And it starts with something that has nothing to do with culture at all. Your brain is doing something right now that you have zero conscious control over. If you're in a room with other people and someone starts tapping a rhythm, your neurons will begin firing in sync with that rhythm whether you want them to or not. You don't decide to do it. You don't choose it. It just happens. Scientists call it neural entrainment, and it is one of the most documented and least discussed phenomena in all of neuroscience. Here's what that means in practical terms. When two people move in synchrony, same rhythm, same beat, same pulse, their brains literally begin to operate on the same frequency. Not metaphorically, not poetically, measurably, on an EEG in a lab with electrodes. Brain waves align, neural firing patterns converge. Two separate nervous systems start running like one. Now put that inside a group of 20 people moving together around a fire in complete darkness 50,000 years ago, and think about what that actually is. That is not entertainment. That is not self-expression. That is a technology, a biological technology for temporarily dissolving the boundary between self and group in a way that no amount of talking, no amount of eye contact, no amount of shared meals can replicate at the same speed or the same depth, and the body doesn't stop there. Synchronized movement triggers the release of endorphins. Not a little, a lot. Researchers at Oxford ran a series of studies where they had groups of people perform the same physical movements, either in sync with each other or slightly out of sync. Same movements, same effort, same duration. The synchronized groups reported significantly higher pain thresholds afterward. Their endorphin response was measurably greater. Moving together with other bodies does something to your chemistry that moving alone simply does not do. Endorphins are the same compounds released during intense exercise, during laughter, during the kind of physical contact that signals safety. Your body releases them when it needs to bond fast, trust fast, act as a unit fast. And for most of human evolutionary history, the situations that required fast bonding were exactly the situations where dying alone was the alternative. This is where the mirror neuron system enters the picture. When you watch another person move, The same motor neurons that would fire if you were making that movement yourself begin to activate in your brain. You are, at a neural level, partially performing every movement you observe, which means a group watching a dancer is not a passive audience. They are a network of bodies in low-level physical resonance, with every move being made in front of them. Ancient humans didn't need a neuroscience textbook to discover this. They just needed to notice that something happened when they moved together that didn't happen any other way. Something that felt like more than the sum of its parts, something that made the group feel, however briefly, like a single thing. That feeling had a function, and that function kept people alive. Here's the uncomfortable reframe. Everything we just described, the neural synchrony, the endorphin release, the mirror neuron activation, none of that is unique to dance. Exercise does some of it. Laughter does some of it. Physical contact does some of it. So why dance specifically? Why did this particular behavior get locked in so deep that it shows up in every human culture without exception? Because dance does something none of those other things can do at scale. In the dark, with strangers, under stress. Think about the problem ancient humans were actually trying to solve. You are living in a group of somewhere between 20 and 150 people. You did not choose these people. Some of them you trust completely. Some of them you're not sure about. Some of them arrived recently from another group, and you have no history with them, no track record, no data, and tomorrow you might need to go into a genuinely dangerous situation with all of them and trust them with your life. How do you build that trust fast enough to matter? Talking doesn't scale. You can have a deep conversation with one person, maybe two. Eye contact works at close range with individuals. Shared meals help, but they're slow and they cap out. What you need is a mechanism that works on 20 bodies simultaneously, that bypasses the slow cognitive process of individual trust building, and that produces a measurable physiological change in everyone present at the same time. Dance is that mechanism. It is the only one humans ever developed that checks all of those boxes at once. Anthropologist Robin Dunbar, the same researcher behind Dunbar's number, the idea that humans can maintain stable relationships with roughly 150 people, has spent years studying the social function of synchronized movement. His research suggests that communal dance operates as what he calls a grooming equivalent at scale. Primate grooming, the physical picking through of fur that chimps and bonobos spend hours doing every day, is fundamentally a trust technology. It releases oxytocin. It signals safety. It builds coalition, but it only works one-on-one. Dance, Dunbar argues, is what allowed early humans to do the equivalent thing with an entire group simultaneously, to groom a crowd. And here is where it gets harder to dismiss as coincidence. The cultures that relied most heavily on coordinated group survival, hunting large animals, defending territory, managing complex seasonal migrations, tend to show the most elaborate, most physically demanding, most rhythmically precise dance traditions in the archaeological and anthropological record. The behavior scaled with the stakes. The more you needed your group to function as a single unit, the more you invested in the technology that made that possible. This also explains something that the joy theory and the religion theory never quite account for. Why does dance feel specifically better in groups than alone? Why does the same movement performed in synchrony with others produce a measurably different physiological response than the identical movement performed solo? If dance were about expression, solo would be enough. If it were about exercise, solo would be enough. If it were about worship, solo prayer would do the job. But if dance is social infrastructure, if its core function is to temporarily bind nervous systems into a coherent group unit, then alone it is simply broken. A telephone with no one on the other end. A technology running with nothing to connect. Your ancestors didn't dance because life was good. They danced because life was hard, and the group was the only thing standing between them and everything trying to kill them. The fire was the center, the rhythm was the signal, and moving together was how you told every nervous system in the circle, we are one thing tonight, and tomorrow we act like it. You went to a concert and something happened that you didn't expect. Maybe it was a song you'd heard 100 times alone in your car, through headphones. Perfectly good, perfectly fine. and then you heard it with 10,000 other people, and it was not the same experience. It was not even close to the same experience. Something cracked open that the headphones version never touched. You told yourself it was the energy, the vibe, the crowd. But now you know what it actually was. It was 40,000 years of biological programming doing exactly what it was built to do. Every wedding dance floor that starts empty and then suddenly isn't. Every bar with a band where people who came in sitting down end up standing. Every church with a choir where the congregation starts swaying without deciding to. Every protest march where the chanting locks into rhythm and the crowd stops being individuals and starts being something else. That's not culture. That's not tradition. That's not even conscious choice most of the time. That is an ancient system activating because the conditions are right and the body knows what to do before the mind catches up. We built concert halls and stadiums and clubs and ballrooms and festival grounds, and every single one of them is, at its structural core, the same thing. A fire, a circle, a rhythm, a group of nervous systems waiting to synchronize. The architecture changed. The technology got more expensive. The tickets got harder to find. The biological transaction happening inside that space is identical to what happened on a dirt floor in the dark 50,000 years ago. We just added lights. Here's what makes this genuinely strange to sit with. We live in the most individualized era in human history. We have private everything. Private entertainment, private transport, private screens, private earbuds pumping private soundtracks into private ears while we move through public space without making contact with anyone. We optimized for individual experience in almost every domain. And yet we keep building the spaces where that individualism temporarily collapses. We keep buying the tickets. We keep showing up. We keep doing the thing that dissolves the boundary between self and group, the thing that makes 20 nervous systems run like one, the thing that our ancestors discovered by firelight and encoded so deep into our biology that 50,000 years of civilization didn't touch it. You don't go to those places because you want to hear music. You can hear music at home. You go because something in you knows the difference between hearing a song and being inside a song with other people. Something in you knows that the version of yourself that exists inside synchronized movement with other bodies is accessing something that the solo version cannot reach. You have always known this. You knew it before you had words for it. That person swaying next to the fire in 40,000 BC wasn't primitive. They weren't superstitious. They weren't killing time before civilization arrived to give life meaning. They were running the same software you run every time you stop resisting the rhythm and just move. They figured something out about what human bodies need from each other that we keep rediscovering, keep rebuilding the architecture for, keep paying money to experience, because no amount of progress has produced a substitute. The fire is still burning. The circle is still there. You just call it something else now.